Everyone makes mistakes, everyone has those days, even the heroes of the Justice League. Unfortunately though, that sometimes means they get completely booted off of the Justice League. For example, Batman. Batman is a planner. That's why the amount of prep time he is given is a major point to cover when talking about whether or not he can take on another character. So yeah, he is a master strategist and tactician. But you know what Batman really sucks at? Communication. I think most of his interpersonal problems can be attributed to the fact that Batman sucks with other people. But it became an absolutely massive problem when it came to the Tower of Babel storyline. You see, Batman had come up with the contingency plans for all his fellow Justice League members, just in case any one of them, or all of them, are corrupted, become mind controlled, or turn evil. And you know how many times that has happened? Like, a lot. So that kinda makes sense. He's not wrong for doing that, and as an added bonus, all of his plans were to detain and incapacitate only. But Bats didn't tell any of his members about the fact that he had these plans. His need to be in control and the lack of trust he had in his other teammates led directly to Ra's al Ghul stealing his plans, altering them to be deadly, and bringing the League to its knees. At the end of the day, the Justice League felt they just couldn't trust Batman anymore, and they put his membership on the team to a vote. It came to a 3-3 tie, with Superman needing to make the final vote, but before he could, Batman had predicted the vote and decided to leave of his own accord. Now nerds, if you have been diligently watching this channel for a while now, you shall be aware of my disdain for the blight on humanity known as Snapper Carr. This wisecracking teenage honorary member of the Justice League is just the worst. Brought on to the team as like a weird kind of mascot so that this team of adults had some kind of connection to the cool young people, he came in slinging slang and snapping his stupid little snapper fingers. Surprising no one, Snapper started to really fall off in his popularity, so DC wrote him out of the league. Feeling underappreciated because he does nothing and kinda sucks, Carr allowed himself to be duped by a disguised Joker. Carr led him right into the Justice League headquarters at the time and helped the Joker capture Batman. Do you know how bad that is? Joker has done some of his worst things to people much lower on his list than Batman. This was one huge reason the League forever abandoned their longtime base. Needless to say, Carr was booted from the League. Now Snapper Carr is one thing, but he is hardly alone in the land of hate. In the wise words of Yoda, no, there is another. And his name is Guy Gardner. This Green Lantern has one of the biggest egos on the League, so much so that it's led to him being knocked out cold by Batman, laughed at by the rest of the League, and in JLA Secret Files #2, it got him booted out by Batman himself. Now side note, the way Batman constantly makes a fool of this man is probably my favorite Batman thing ever. This came during the Guy Gardner warrior phase, where he decided to don face paint, knee pads, and walk around with like no shirt all the time. It was really weird, but it also happened to be a time that he thought he could become the leader of the JLA. While Batman and Aquaman were trying to reform the League, Gardner decided to sit and wait for the rest of the League to show up to the headquarters, and then he cockily claimed that as the de facto leader, nobody could eject him from the team. All it took was a good old stare from Batman, and Guy just went right back on his words almost immediately and stormed out of the Justice League. Now one of the conflicts that reared its head in Philip Kennedy Johnson's run on Action Comics, aka Superman's book, was the surprise arrival of Thao La and a group of Kryptonian refugees. These refugees were chased by Mongols' war zoons, and it resulted in their ship being wrecked in the ocean. However, on board this ship was a powerful cosmic artifact known as the Genesis Fragment. Now since the ship crashed in the ocean, the Atlanteans ended up discovering the fragment. This led to a conflict between both the Atlanteans and the Navy. So, Superman decided to take things into his own hands. Meaning, he took the fragment into his own hands. He took the fragment. In Action Comics number 1035, after saving Thao La, the League show up to the Fortress of Solitude, and Superman guesses that they are there to boot him out of the League. And they are. According to Hippolyta and Hawkgirl, taking the fragment, which technically belongs to Kryptonians, ticked off the Atlanteans, the UN, and the US military, and the League has to work with the world's governments, so he is kicked out of the team. Is it dumb? Incredibly, but Superman was more concerned with saving the captured Kryptonian refugees anyways, so whatever. And he got back on the team. Doesn't matter. Now the Justice League can only function as the world premier superhero team by adhering to a strict code of ethics, morals, and rules. Unsurprisingly, one of those rules is not breaking people's necks, and Wonder Woman missed the memo on that one. Nah, she actually knew exactly what she was doing. In Wonder Woman number 219, part of Greg Rucka's The OMAC project, which saw Maxwell Lord using OMAC to both control and wipe out metahumans on Earth, Lord used his mind control abilities to turn Superman into a wrecking ball, causing mass destruction. And so, Diana felt that she was left with, quote, no option, and she brutally snapped Lord's neck, ending his earthly existence instantly. This resulted in Batman's brother eye activating and broadcasting her completely stone cold face and actions across the entire world. While Wonder Woman stood by her decision, a lot of the League did not. One of which being Superman, who couldn't even look her in the eye, which is pretty stupid when you think about it. I've seen Man of Steel, Superman. I saw what you did to General Zod. You're not innocent here. But if you think Wonder Woman and Henry Cavill are the only League members who have turned someone's head into a merry-go-round, well, look no further than the trial of Barry Allen. When the Reverse Flash was attempting to take the life of one Fiona Webb, the Flash managed to grab his nemesis from behind at super speed, and this accidentally snapped the villain's neck. This got Barry pretty promptly arrested and charged with manslaughter, and got him put on trial. Similar to Batman during the Tower of Babel, the Justice League are torn right down the middle on whether or not go or stay, leaving it, once again, up to Superman to decide. But unlike Batman, Barry actually waits for Superman's answer, and he waits, because it took 3 issues for Supes to actually reveal his decision. Barry ended up being reduced to a probationary member pending the results of his trial, but Barry decided to take it into his own hands and left the League, leaving him a lot of free time to worry about his actual trial. But that's far from the only time that someone got booted for the old ending of a life thing. In fact, with the Justice League having a no-killing rule, you'd think they wouldn't take on members who are known to do that. But they do. They definitely do. And one of them is Bat family member Huntress. While Batman stands by his no-killing rule, his family members don't necessarily follow suit. And when the JLA villain Prometheus attacks the Watchtower and specifically goes after Barbara Gordon, aka Oracle, Helena decides that he has got to go. And honestly, given how big of a threat Prometheus is, I kinda see why she feels that way. Batman, however, does not feel that way. He stops Helena before she can do the deed and fires her from the League on the spot for even trying. It's cold. And it's a little interesting coming from the guy who beats up regular criminals so bad that they probably have lifelong health issues, but alas, morals. Now it's kinda surprising that this next one even happened, but it also proves to me that the Justice League clearly don't do any in-depth background checks. And they have Batman and Cyborg, so it should be like super easy. I guess they overlook things when you do something even mildly heroic. Rhonda Pineda, aka Atomica, found herself on the Justice League after she managed to defuse an Atlantean explosive device. That's all it took, and boom, full trust and admiration on the League. Well, if anyone cared to look a little bit deeper, they may have come to find that Atomica was not even from that universe. Atomica hailed from Earth 3, home of the evil version of the Justice League known as the Crime Syndicate of America. And surprise, she was one of their main members. Atomica eventually reveals herself when she plants a virus in Cyborg that turns him into the evil Grid, and she brings her entire crime syndicate to Earth, leading them to take over, and requiring the villains to step up to save the world. Lex Luthor, who led this group of heroic villains, kindly let Atomica know that she was off the League as he squished her under his boot. Now I know people like to make fun of Aquaman, but people who actually read the comics know that he's kind of a huge badass. One of the most boss moments he had came when he decided to fire basically everyone from the Justice League. Did it go well long term? No, but it was incredibly bold and kind of justified. In Justice League Annual number 2, a JLA satellite got completely destroyed, and it's all because a whole bunch of the Justice League members couldn't actually pull themselves away from their personal issues that they were going through. But this is their job. They have a responsibility that is higher than themselves and their personal problems. Needless to say, Aquaman is pretty peed off. Now, being an original charter member of the League, Aquaman makes a pretty drastic decision when he decides to kick out every superhero who won't promise to commit themselves wholly and exclusively to League activities. This left us with Elongated Man, Martian Manhunter, and Zatanna, which is like a good group, but hardly top sellers. This resulted in a completely new league being formed. While you may not agree with his decision, it was incredibly bold, and I think it probably put a few members in their place.
Welcome back, nerds. The Justice League has faced some pretty nasty foes over the years, and today we've gathered some of the worst that nearly destroyed the team. 10. Amazo, an android built by Dr. Ivo with the terrifying but cool ability to copy the powers of every Justice League member, or simply any metahuman he encounters. If the League were to upgrade or evolve, Amazo adapts and becomes stronger. His relentless evolution has forced the heroes to rethink teamwork, proving that power without unity can tear them apart. 9. Starro, the extraterrestrial starfish with psychic mind control spores, was one of the first villains the League ever faced, and certainly one of the most persistent. Capable of mind controlling entire populations, Starro's invasions have come dangerously close to turning the heroes against one another. His hive mind intelligence makes him a symbol of collective domination over individual will. Though we do not like Starro, we do love his offspring Jarro, who became a Robin. 8. Felix Faust. This ancient sorcerer has repeatedly brought the League to its knees through dark, demonic magic and manipulation. Faust's hunger for mystical artifacts and forbidden knowledge often drags the team into otherworldly conflicts. His mastery of souls and enchantments challenges even the League's most powerful mystics. 7. Vandal Savage, an immortal born from a prehistoric meteor strike and the rough and tumble nature of his caveman time. Vandal Savage has thousands of years of strategy and resources behind him. His plans, they often span entire centuries, with the Justice League sometimes just stumbling into one phase of a much larger scheme. Savage nearly conquered the world by exploiting history itself, forcing the League to fight in unconventional ways. 6. Dr. Light. Despite originally being a minor, even sometimes idiotic foe, Dr. Light became one of the League's most disturbing adversaries after discovering how far he could push their moral limits in DC's identity crisis. His infamous actions against the team's loved ones led to their darkest internal battles. Even after he was incapacitated, what he did hung over the team's head and caused many members to compromise on their values, with the whole erasing memory situation leading to years of distrust and broken friendships. 5. Anti-Monitor. Responsible for countless cosmic crises, the Anti-Monitor nearly erased all of existence during the crisis on Infinite Earths. His hunger for universes left countless heroes deceased and reality shattered. Facing him required the sacrifice of some of the greatest heroes ever known, forever altering the League and the multiverse. Which brings us to number 4, Superboy Prime, the Boxer himself. A twisted reflection of heroism, the Superboy Prime began as a lost soul and became one of the most destructive forces in DC history. His rage and disillusionment drove him to eliminate entire teams, tearing through heroes and universes alike. The League barely contained him, realizing that even hope itself can curdle into horror. 3. The Injustice League. I mean, with a name like that, it's pretty clear. A collective threat, the Legion unites the League's greatest enemies, each capable of defeating their counterpart hero. When led by Lex Luthor or Gorilla Grodd, their combined intellect and power force the Justice League into desperate positions. These alliances remind the team that evil can be just as cooperative as good. But number 2, Lex Luthor. His hater energy extends far beyond Superman. Superman's archenemy and one of humanity's most brilliant minds, Lex Luthor's hatred of the League stems from his obsession with control and his ego. He's weaponized politics, science, and propaganda to turn the world against its heroes. Luthor's genius proves time and time again that humanity's greatest threat isn't alien invasions, sometimes it's human ambition. But number 1, Darkseid, because of course, the ruler of Apocalypse stands as the Justice League's ultimate nemesis. Driven by his quest for the anti-life equation, Darkseid seeks to extinguish free will across the universe. His sheer power, armies, and divine intellect have brought the League to the edge of annihilation more than once and in more than one universe, cementing him as the ultimate embodiment of tyranny and despair.
With comic book characters who have been around for decades, it can sometimes be difficult to keep track of the source of a hero and their villain's rivalries. Welcome to Top 10 Nerd. I'm Andrew Boyd, and today we will be looking at the top 10 reasons the Reverse Flash hates the Flash. There have been multiple Flashes and multiple Reverse Flashes who have hated each other for different reasons depending on the continuity, so try to keep up as we dive into the lore of the fastest man alive. Let's start our list with the most recent Reverse Flash, Daniel West. He is the brother of longtime Flash love interest Iris West. When Daniel's mother died giving birth to him, his father spent the next few years taking out all of his anger on his son. This culminated in Daniel pushing his father down a flight of stairs nightmares paralyzing him. Realizing that his sister would never look at him the same way, he ran away and became a criminal. Which leads us to the first reason he hates Barry Allen's Flash. Number 10. Arrested by the Flash. In the New 52 continuity, the first appearance of the Flash was when he stopped a car that was fleeing a bank robbery. It was a dramatic debut, but little did he know that the getaway driver was Danny West, who was attempting to pull his first major score and who would eventually become one of the Reverse Flashes. Getting busted and sent to jail by the Flash is as good a reason as any to have a bit of a grudge against him, but things escalated when he was released 5 years later. Number 9. Flash prevented his patricide. After his release, Danny tried to make amends with his sister Iris, but she was not ready to forgive him. He got into an accident involving a Speed Force battery, which gave him the ability to turn back time, and he became the latest Reverse Flash. He decided to go back in time to kill his father so that his sister would love him again. He attempted this and accidentally caused himself and Iris more trauma when their younger selves walked in on the attempt. Flash stopped him and put him in prison, but his sister was so appalled at his actions that she disowned him as a brother, leaving him totally alone. And it's all because the Flash stopped his plan. Next, let's look at a couple reasons why the second most well-known Reverse Flash, Hunter Zolomon, hates the Wally West Flash. Number 8. Flash refused to save him. Hunter Zolomon was a profiler who worked for the Keystone City Police in their Department of Metahuman Hostilities. He was good friends with Wally's Flash, and the two often worked together to put away criminals. When Hunter was paralyzed in an attack by Gorilla Grodd, he asked Wally to use the cosmic treadmill to go back in time and prevent his injury. Knowing the unintended consequences of time travel, Wally refused, resulting in the two having a falling out. Hunter tried to use the treadmill himself and it exploded, giving him the ability to slow down time around him, giving him the appearance of super speed. He became the new Reverse Flash, otherwise known as Zoom, and decided that the reason Wally wasn't willing to help is that he didn't understand personal tragedy the way Barry Allen did. He became a supervillain, believing that by ruining Wally's life, he would make him a better hero. So, Zoom was bitter about Flash's refusal to help, but believes that he can make Wally a better hero in the long run, or at least he did. Number 7. Guilt for not helping his friend. Flash forward a few years to the Rebirth continuity, and Zoom's story is pretty much the same. He has teamed up with the other Reverse Flash, Eobard Thawne, and the two are working together. Zoom and Thawne get into an argument, with Zoom believing that they can still make the Flashes better heroes, and Thawne insisting that the only thing the speedsters deserve is death. Thawne ditches Zoom and gets killed by Iris West in an altercation with the Flash. Zoom feels guilty for not having gone with his friend to help him and decides that Thawne was right, and decides to put a plan to kill the Flashes into motion. Speaking of Eobard Thawne, let's spend the rest of the list talking about him. Eobard Thawne is by far the most iconic version of the Reverse Flash. He is a time traveler from the 25th century who has come into conflict with multiple Flashes over the years. Let's briefly go over why he hates the Wally West version of the character before we focus on his more long-running rivalry. Number 6. He's jealous of Wally. Once Wally West had taken over as the Flash, he had a bizarre experience with the Reverse Flash. Wally was aware of Reverse Flash's history with Barry Allen, but in the chronology of Thawne's life, this was his first interaction with a Flash. In the 25th century, Thawne was a major Flash stan, getting plastic surgery to look more like Barry, collecting merch and artifacts, and even giving himself speed powers so he could go back in time and meet the Flash using a cosmic treadmill. Flash arrived after Barry's death, and for reasons we'll get into later, had a mental breakdown and thought that he was Barry Allen. He operated as the Flash with Wally for a bit, but seeing how much Wally was being embraced as a hero and thinking that he was stealing the mantle from him, the fake Barry became jealous and left Wally to die in a death trap and decided to destroy Central City as revenge for them forgetting Barry's legacy. But let's put a pin in this story for now. Let's talk about some of the reasons Eobard Thawne hates Barry Allen. Number 5. He stranded him at the beginning of time. Over the course of their mini battles, the hatred between Reverse Flash and the Flash has grown exponentially, but while this was occurring, Reverse Flash was also falling in love with Barry's wife, Iris. He came into their home when Barry was away and proposed to Iris, who said no, because she loved her husband and also because Reverse Flash is a crazy psycho. Reverse Flash got his revenge by sneaking into a costume party where everyone was dressed as superheroes and killed Iris, who was dressed as Batgirl. By vibrating his hand hand so that it could pass through her skull and he could scramble her brain. Flash figured out Thawne's involvement and fought him in a time machine that was hurtling back through time. Flash fled the machine, leaving Thawne to hurtle towards his doom alone. Thawne was stranded alone in the pre-dinosaur age for 4 years before escaping and vowing revenge on Barry. Number 4, the Flash killed him. Once he got away from his imprisonment at the start of time, Thawne decided to get his revenge by trying to kill another of Barry's love interests. On the day that Barry was set to marry Fiona Webb, Reverse Flash returned and led Flash on a worldwide chase before heading towards the chapel to kill Fiona. Barry stopped him at the last moment by clotheslining him, but broke Thawne's neck in the process, killing him instantly. Thawne was eventually resurrected, but obviously was pretty peeved about the whole getting killed by his archenemy thing, which leads us back to his time travel adventure with Wally West that we talked about earlier. Number 3, it's simply fate. So earlier I said that Thawne was a massive Flash fan, who went back in time and had a mental breakdown. But what caused this? Well, upon arriving in the late 20th century, Thawne made a visit to the Flash Museum and looked at the exhibits on Flash's enemies. The identity of the Reverse Flash had been lost to time in the 25th century, but was common knowledge here. He saw the exhibit on the Reverse Flash and learned that he was destined to become his hero's greatest enemy, and that he would eventually end up dying at his hands. The shock of this drove him insane, and as he put it, a lifetime of adoration curdled into hatred. This is what caused him to think that he was Barry Allen during his first outing as the Reverse Flash. Wally eventually defeated him and sent him back to his own time. Thawne lost his memories of the incident and would end up believing that Barry was the first Flash that he ever fought. Number 2, he can't exist without him. After years and continuity's worth of losing to Barry Allen, Reverse Flash decided it was time to end this game of cat and mouse. He used his speed to stalk Barry for his entire life, learning everything he could about the hero, eventually discovering Flash's origin. Upon finding the moment where Barry was struck by lightning and doused with chemicals, Thawne decided that he would prevent the chemicals from spilling so that Barry never got his powers and he could be the only Flash who ever existed. Unfortunately for him, this almost caused him to blink out of existence, and he learned how linked they really were. As he himself put it, Barry must come first. He must become the Flash so I can become the Reverse Flash. No, no! The man I most want dead! The man I'd give anything to kill. He has to live, or I die. Realizing that he couldn't kill Barry, he instead decided to ruin his life. He went back to Barry's childhood and did everything he could to make it miserable. He would move around too fast to be seen and knock books out of Barry's hands, push him downstairs, and move his glove when he was playing baseball so that Barry would fail to catch the ball. Just really petty stuff to hurt this child. He progressively got more extreme, preventing Barry's childhood best friend from ever being born so that Barry would grow up lonely, and most terrible of all, Barry's mother and framing his father for the crime. Say what you want about the Reverse Flash, but he takes revenge to a whole new level. Number 1, he isn't special to Barry. But if the Reverse Flash started out as a Flash fan and doesn't have any memory of his adventure with Wally, what caused the initial spark of hatred in Eobard? Well, as I mentioned before, Thawne spent a lot of time and money recreating the Flash's powers. He did this so he could become the Flash of the 25th century. Eventually, Barry found himself in the 25th century and became friends with his successor, teaching Thawne that every second is a gift. Barry discovered that the 25th century was actually a peaceful place with no need for superheroes, so Thawne had been creating the problems he was solving in order to be seen as a hero. Flash defeated Thawne and sent him to prison. Thawne made an honest effort to redeem himself and was eventually released, and wanted to show Flash how much progress he had made. He made his yellow Reverse Flash outfit because that's the color all of the Flash's partners had worn, and traveled back in time to see Barry. While in the past, he saw Barry giving Wally a watch as a graduation present with the inscription, "Every second is a gift." He realized that his relationship with Barry wasn't special, and decided to make it his life's mission to ruin Barry's. Despite his hatred, if Flash were to offer to be his friend, he would probably jump at the chance. After all, when Flash asked him why he was so obsessed with invading Barry's life, Thawne responded, "Because it's the only way you'll spend time with me."
Number 10. Superman. I mean, hate is a really strong word, especially if we're talking about the relationship between Clark and Bruce. However, you likely clicked for the hate, so it's kind of my job to give that to you. While Superman and Batman are generally like BFFs for life, even BFFs have those moments where they really question, why they ever became friends in the first place. I know I've had those moments myself with my BFFs, and it turns out so have Bruce and Cal. There have been a few instances where Superman has really questioned Batman's judgment, and he even once voted to have him kicked off of the Justice League for just that. This was during Tower of Babel, though really Superman was more disappointed in Batman than anything else. I mean, I think most of the Justice League's members were, and as a result, Batman was successfully removed from the roster and his position as team leader. There is also, of course, a whole other universe where these two genuinely did come to hate each other. That is the Injustice universe, where Superman, in essence, became a dictator after being broken mentally by the Joker and kind of turned into a villain as a result of that. Batman refused to join Superman's side in this universe, making the two ultimately enemies. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love, or sometimes maybe love to hate, Batman, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Green Lantern John Stewart. Definitely one of the smaller moments, I would say, of hate on this list. John Stewart at one point was leader of the Justice League, which is awesome for him, but maybe, not so great for Batman, who for a long time has been known as the League's often de facto leader, and who kind of has a thing about always being in control, always needing to be in control. That's Batman for you. During John's time as leader in Justice League issue number 40, we see this struggle between these two, with Batman struggling to accept his role as a team member as opposed to a leader, and often questioning John's leadership and judgment, causing Green Lantern John Stewart in turn to question whether or not Batman should basically even remain on this team. Which honestly, to be fair, yeah, I'm kind of on John's side with this one. Batman shouldn't be undermining John. It's not very cool. Batman wouldn't like it if people were doing that to him. Number 8. Green Lantern Hal Jordan. Even in the main continuity, I would say that Bruce Wayne's Batman and Hal Jordan's Green Lantern are, kinda opposites. However, that doesn't mean they don't see eye to eye all the time. Many times they do, as they are both superheroes who, of course, are both out there fighting for justice. The difference is that Batman prefers to operate outside of the law and kinda in the shadows, whereas Hal literally wields light as a weapon for the law. He is the law as a Green Lantern, and on an intergalactic level, whereas Batman is honestly more of a street level superhero or vigilante, the polar opposite basically. However, there is a reality where their differences make it almost impossible for them to see eye to eye. Frank Miller's Earth 31. Here, Batman at one point gets Robin to help him paint an entire safe house yellow while sporting yellow versions of their suits and consuming yellow food and drink just to get Hal Jordan off of his case. The two even fight, with Batman using the color yellow to basically taunt Hal by exposing his weakness to it, which is also in stark contrast to the main continuity, where Hal before has even stated that Batman's fear tactics don't actually work on him, pretty much because he is such a powerful and unstoppable Green Lantern. Number 7. Peacemaker. While everyone might be focused on the end of the Blue Beetle trailer and what Hamy's uncle said about Batman, we actually do have some straight up hate from the DCU when it comes to heroes who actually hate Batman. So far, it actually isn't Blue Beetle or even Blue Beetle's uncle, although Blue Beetle's uncle is also not technically a superhero, I don't think, but it's Peacemaker and, maybe briefly Superman in the DCEU. Remember in one of the episodes of the first season of Peacemaker when Chris went on a whole rant to his dad's neighbor, basically calling Batman out as weak in comparison to himself as a hero? I remember that. That was some hate right there. Pretty sure Peacemaker pretty much hates everybody on the Justice League though. Number 6. Supergirl. Supergirl and Batman have pretty much always had a tense relationship, or at least a version of Batman and Supergirl have. This is also made more confusing by the fact that this Supergirl first appeared in a canonically debated series, I'd say, Superman/Batman by Jeff Loeb. While some things were incorporated into the canon from this series, some didn't quite fit with the rest of what was happening in the main continuity at that time. So although this series seems to be acknowledged as canon by pretty much all the wikis on the internet, it still has been a debated topic among fans. DC does this basically sometimes with series that are super loved. When asked if those stories are canon later by fans, they often answer them with the question of, well, I mean, like, what do you think? Should this be canon? So we kind of decide what's canon and what's not, and they kind of just take the bits and pieces that they like the most. And then from there, certain things are just like incorporated into the canon. Like with Alan Moore's The Killing Joke and, you know, what happened to Barbara there. Anyways, Batman and kind of newer Supergirl's beef comes from the fact that when she first arrives in Superman/Batman, she causes quite the stir after exiting her ship, which Batman finds in Gotham. Naked and confused, Kara wanders around and basically causes all kinds of destruction. Now add in the fact that Superman was initially believed to be the last surviving Kryptonian, Kara's anger issues, and the fact that she turns evil more than once, and I mean, it kind of makes sense that her and Batman would not get along. He kind of doesn't really trust her, and as a result, she kind of doesn't really like Batman. She's like, this guy is just a big jerky jerk and he doesn't get me. Number 5. Wonder Woman. Might be a shocking one for people that I put Wonder Woman at 5, but let me tell you about it. Wonder Woman and Batman are generally seen as, of course, being potential romantic interests for one another, as well as usually being depicted as like very close friends. So you know, it might surprise you to hear the hatred between them. Of course, this isn't really in the main continuity. Now there, they generally admire and respect one another, despite being very different heroes, I'd say. And despite the fact that Wonder Woman as an Amazon does not have any qualms with killing, unlike Batman, who that's like a huge no-no for Batman. However, even in the main continuity, they have had their differences, like in Greg Rucka's and J.G. Jones's Wonder Woman story, The Hecate, where the two are actually forced to fight over the fate of a woman who has sought Diana's protection. There are also other realities where their fighting has been much less incidental, which is kind of what we're focused on here, such as the reality belonging to Superman Red Son. Here, on what we know as Earth 30, Wonder Woman is in love with Superman, who here was actually raised in Russia, so he's a Russian Superman, and ends up being used as bait by the Russian Batman, who seeks to destroy Superman. During this fight, Wonder Woman is forced to break her lasso of truth, which causes her to basically age. While she resents Superman for this later on, it's fair to say that she would also probably hate Batman as well, as he was the one who incapacitated her in the first place. Number 4. Catwoman. It might seem odd to you for me to have Catwoman on my list for a few reasons. I mean, is Catwoman a superhero? And does she not love Batman? Well, I would personally argue that yes, she is a hero more often than not, at least in modern comics, and I would also kind of agree that yes, she does love Batman as well. However, that doesn't mean that she hasn't also hated Batman at the same time in the past. In fact, she literally has done that. Check out issue number 355 of Batman, where when Batman leaves her for Vicky Vale, she confesses to basically just that. Basically, like, literally says, like, I'm in love with you, but I also hate you for kind of like what you did to me, you abandoned me. So, kind of classic Catwoman, I think. Bit of a love-hate thing they have going. Number 3. Spawn. Spawn and Batman had a team up at one point in the crossover issue Spawn/Batman from 1994. Not to be confused with their recent team up from 2022, Batman/Spawn. Very different, as you can tell from that title. And although this Batman definitely does not seem like our main continuity Batman, possibly because he's being written by Frank Miller here, he and Spawn both had a huge fight in this crossover, with both of them wanting to basically actively harm the other. Bury this. That's me throwing a batarang, because that happens at the end of the comic. Number 2. Rick Flag. Rick Flag Jr. is often known for his role in the Suicide Squad team, generally acting as their field commander on behalf of Amanda Waller. Initially, Rick respected Batman. Rick even offers a team up to the Dark Knight during a rescue mission to save Nemesis from a Russian prison, which they're both on with their own separate teams. Batman with Justice League International and Rick with the Suicide Squad. When Batman turns him down though, things quickly escalate and the two break out into a literal physical fight. It all starts with Rick trying to be like, Batman, don't walk away from me, let's have a conversation. And then it's like, nope, now we're fighting. Number 1. Green Lantern Guy Gardner. While alternate Superman might take the cake for hating Batman and a slew of other superheroes who stood in his way in the Injustice universe, I would say like Honestly, if we're talking alt universes, it's one of the worst. This is, at the end of the day, an alternate reality still. So Guy Gardner is ranking much higher for the fact that the conflict between Batman and Guy was very real in the main continuity, and even at one point culminated in a fight between them. A one-punch fight too. Oh boy. Guy challenged Batman for leadership of the Justice League, took off his Green Lantern ring, and then was pretty much defeated in one punch by Batman. That'll probably make you hate someone. You know, at least for a while. Although I think Guy's over it at this point. Number 10. Green Arrow. Green Arrow is sometimes known to take issue with Superman in the sense that he feels the hero is far too powerful to really connect with humanity, seeing him as somewhat dangerous and aloof. This makes some sense when you consider that Oliver Queen, in contrast to Superman, is very much a street-level superhero, quite literally a Robin Hood of sorts. Although there is irony in this kind of concern coming from Queen, considering that Ollie is also not quite your commonplace man of the people in regards to his station in life and usually, you know, the vast wealth connected with his name. In Dark Knights of Steel, however, this criticism makes quite a bit more sense, with the medieval Green Arrow of this universe being a commoner in contrast to King Jor-El and his son Prince Kal-El, and this version of Ollie is not afraid to showcase his thoughts when it comes to the tyrannical hold he feels the House of El has on the kingdom. Oliver Queen coming for the royals. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when we talk about superhero beef, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Or if you just like when I say superhero beef. Number 9. The Flash. Hate might be a strong word to describe the tension between Superman and Barry Allen's The Flash, although if you know me, you know that for me, hate is always a strong word. Instead, I would say these two have more of a rivalry, if you will, often racing one another, and with The Flash kind of gloating that he's simply too fast for Superman to catch. Barry's always like, no one can touch me, I'm the fastest man alive, which makes Barry somewhat of a perfect match, you'd think, for the Man of Steel. Of course, this claim hasn't always been true, has it? There are times the two have been forced to fight against one another, and Superman has actually managed to get his hands on Barry, or at least his finger. While it hasn't always worked out in his favor, especially if he's going up against Superman, the Flash sometimes feels as though his way of dealing with crime is somewhat superior to Superman's, or at the very least that it is somewhat oddly underappreciated by his fellow Justice League member Kal-El. Number 8. Martian Manhunter. What's Martian Manhunter's beef with Superman? Well, nothing super specific, to be honest. It's more like a hodgepodge collection of things that have contributed to some tension between the two superheroes over time. It's less that Martian Manhunter hates Superman, and more that they occasionally do butt heads. For the most part though, John Johns tends to be a pretty calm, cool, and collected type, and isn't prone to striking out against his colleagues. That's just not who he is. However, it also has been shown that he is somewhat jealous of Superman, and resents the love that people show for Clark over him. At least that seems to be what is implied when he returns as a Black Lantern after dying, as showcased during the Blackest Night event in issue number 44 of the 2005 Green Lantern series. It's like literally lifting buildings up and being like, I'm as strong as Superman. I don't know, seems like he's got some issues, but he doesn't want to talk about them when he's alive, only when he's a Black Lantern. Number 7. Booster Gold. Another hero who would probably be a lot less timid when it comes to his dislike of Superman, or rather the praise that Superman often gets in comparison, is Booster Gold. For Booster, his jealousy probably comes from more of a place of insecurity than Martian Manhunter's jealousy. I don't think John is necessarily insecure, but he's more like deep down, rightfully kind of frustrated that he's constantly living in the shadow of another alien superhero who he feels, you know, he's on a similar level to. And honestly, while Martian Manhunter might not be as popular with comic book fans in comparison to Superman, based on what I know at least of his power set, I would agree. Booster Gold already comes with self-esteem issues right out of his origin. He became a hero in an attempt to redeem himself, so I mean, of course, he's not going to be the most secure about his status as a hero. And add in the fact that he is often the butt of people's jokes in the DC universe and is not taken as seriously as a hero, and it makes sense that he'd have some disdain for Superman and all the love the hero receives by comparison. Number 6. Shazam. Typically Shazam, aka the formerly known Captain Marvel, aka Billy Batson, is often portrayed as someone who looks up to Superman, although that isn't to say that they don't have their moments where they do kind of compete against each other, because, well, I mean, as fans we like to be like, who's more powerful? In the Injustice universe though, despite following Superman, At one point, Shazam also tries to act as a voice of reason when he actually kinda questions Superman's judgment. Seeing this as a challenge to his authority though, Superman reacts pretty dramatically by basically killing Shazam, focusing his heat vision on Shazam's eyes until his head basically melts. Sounds like a pretty terrible way to go, not gonna lie. Looks like a pretty terrible way to go in that comic too. Number 5, Hercules. Calling Hercules a hero is somewhat debatable. It kinda depends on which period in this history we're referring to. In the early days though, Hercules was definitely marketed as a hero. In fact, while I'm more familiar with him as somewhat of a villain in Amazonian history, he initially was portrayed as being a captive of the Amazons held against his will, who simply tricked Hippolyta into giving him her girdle so he might escape imprisonment. Although, then he also took it out on the Amazons, that whole thing, and that's a whole other thing. Even back then, he really did seem to hate the Amazons. Although perhaps in that story with some good reason, since, he was their prisoner. With Superman, his hatred of the hero came from a love of Lois Lane, when Hercules found himself transported to the future, Superman's present day in the 20th century. However, this brief encounter likely wouldn't be remembered by Hercules today, since he was kinda made to forget all about it when he traveled back to his own time. So yeah. But that was the thing, he loved Lois Lane for a minute. Number 4, Green Lantern. Guy Gardner once had his own series where he decided to actually pick a fight with Superman. And this actually wasn't the first time these two would fight either. For Guy, this was a rematch that he wanted because the last time they fought, Superman basically trounced him. Although we often know him as the hero Green Lantern, this was during a time when Guy was actually wearing a yellow ring, having powered up his ring through fighting Green Lanterns, which is how it seems to charge, at least here. Guy heads to Earth to fight against Superman. However, even Guy finds it challenging to commit to a battle against Supes. You see, right around this time, the Justice League was also kind of fighting Doomsday, so Guy ultimately heads to Earth to fight Superman, and then ultimately ends up joining in the fight against Doomsday. And if you've heard of the Death of Superman storyline, I think you know how that all goes. Not very well for almost everyone involved, because Doomsday is insane. Number 3, Wonder Woman. In the Superman Red Sun universe, Wonder Woman actually starts out as an ally of Superman's and even falls in love with him. So, where does it all go wrong here? In the Red Sun universe, we explore a world where Superman is actually an agent of the Soviet Union, having landed there instead of in America when he fell to Earth. Wonder Woman and Superman are involved in a relationship that is mainly fueled by politics, uniting both the strength of the Soviet Union with that of Themyscira and the Amazons. However, when Superman is taken prisoner by his world's Batman, Wonder Woman rushes in to save him. In the end, this rescue attempt costs her pretty dearly, with Wonder Woman being forced to break her lasso after being restrained by it, and therefore as a result losing her immortality and her eternal youth. Despite initially loving Superman, because of this, Wonder Woman's love turns to, well, kinda hate, and she never really fully forgives him for what happened to her as a result of his own capture. Number 2, Batman. Batman and Superman are often known for being best friends in the main continuity. I mean, Clark was asked to be Bruce's best man at his wedding. The wedding to Selena Kyle, aka Catwoman, which of course ended up not really happening and getting called off, but still, this just goes to show how close the two of them are. So how could Batman hate Superman? Well, in an alternate reality known as Injustice, or Injustice Gods Among Us, full title, Superman ends up becoming a ruthless tyrant after losing Metropolis and his family, Lois Lane, and their future child together. What's worse was Superman was the one to take Lois's life, thanks to the machinations of Joker and Harley Quinn. This causes Superman to snap, killing the Joker and setting out to control the world in response, starting a full-out, unforgiving war on crime. Batman, however, in this universe, disagrees with Clark's approach, seeing him for what he is, a controlling and unforgiving tyrant, who has been basically driven mad with power as a result of his loss. This causes a divide between the two, with Batman gathering his own team to combat Superman and the heroes who follow him. Number 1, Black Canary. I forgot about this one and then I was like, oh yeah, that's a good one. Also, thank you to Adam for the suggestion when I was asking for some folks to give me some ideas, because this list stumped me a bit. I was like, but everyone loves Superman. Except for me, I guess. I find Superman to be a little boring, but obviously I haven't read the right Superman stories, I think. Black Canary has some pretty big and honestly understandable beef with Superman in the Injustice universe. Like many heroes, Black Canary is one of those who stands against Superman, attempting at one point to help defeat him. And she actually does like pretty good too, I gotta say. However, unlike some of the other superheroes who rally against Clark in this universe, for Black Canary, her hatred of the Man of Steel is quite personal, because he took from her the one man she loved, Green Arrow, Oliver Queen, which also makes this battle between them like a lot more intense in a good way.
And at 10, Quicksilver. The Flash is known as the fastest character in DC Comics, and while Superman may come close, he doesn't hold the title of fastest man alive. Over in Marvel Comics, however, that title belongs to Quicksilver, a mutant hero with an arrogant demeanor and formidable speed. He rarely meets anyone or anything that can challenge his velocity until the DC vs Marvel crossover event where he faced off against the Flash. Yes, this actually happened. At the beginning of their battle, the two heroes were evenly matched, but Quicksilver briefly gains the upper hand. However, it doesn't last long, as Flash's speed proves to be too much for Quicksilver to handle. The Flash secures his victory with relative ease. Though they team up later in the series, Quicksilver can't seem to shake his resentment towards the Flash for being faster than him. The Flash is the undisputed fastest character in DC Comics, so yeah, I mean, like, it makes sense. He proved to be even faster than Quicksilver, Marvel's fastest character. Yeah, I can understand the resentment. I mean, if you think that you're the fastest and then they prove that you're not, it makes you a little bit bitter. In at 9, The Flash. Ironically enough, one of the superheroes who hates the Flash is actually the Flash. And I'm not talking about like Wally hating Barry's version. I'm talking Barry Allen getting so mad at himself that he travels back in time to kill his younger version. This is a thing, guys. This is comics. While Savitar was introduced as the future Flash in the show, the real future Flash is very different in the comics. When Iris and Wally West get into a car accident, Wally ends up dying and Iris gets paralyzed. Blaming himself for not being there, Barry becomes a much darker hero after. He kills the Reverse Flash, Mirror Master, and Grodd before turning his attention on his past. The Speed Force has a tear in it, so Barry kills his younger self and uses the energy to seal that tear. Good Barry wakes up in a savage world, a place outside of time, and he uses his intelligence to return to the normal world and then fights off his future self once again. The two then team up against a different villain who wants to use the Speed Force to destroy the world, and the older Barry creates a large enough explosion to kill the villain, which was technically himself. But basically, the gist of this storyline is that Barry's mad at himself for not being able to save Wally and Iris, so he decides that the only way to fix this is to go back in time and kill his younger version, because that makes sense. And at 8, Kid Flash. Wallace West, also known as Kid Flash in DC Rebirth, is the son of Daniel West, who becomes Reverse Flash, and the nephew of Iris West. Due to some time-traveling events involving the Speed Force and, you know, the reasons that they had to make sure that the characters were the same age in the comics, Wally gains speed power similar to his idol the Flash and becomes eager to fight crime. But he needs training because, you know, he's new to the Speed Force and having speed, and he's also kind of reckless. Although Wally doesn't really listen to Barry, he respects and listens to the Flash, who is Barry's alter ego, but he doesn't actually know about it. He doesn't know that Barry's the Flash at this point. But Barry knows about Wally's. Barry takes Wally under his wing as the Flash and trains him, but their relationship becomes strained when Barry is forced to reveal his identity. Wally already resented Barry for being distant with Iris, but when he discovers that Barry is the Flash, he hates him even more. He's furious at Barry for keeping the secret for so long, and it made the resentment grow that much more, so yeah. In at 7, Green Lantern. After Hal Jordan's descent into madness, Ganthet, the last guardian of the universe, created one final Green Lantern ring and bestowed it upon the artist Kyle Rayner. Entrusting him with the legacy of the Green Lantern Corps, despite some initial doubts, Kyle proved to be an exemplary Green Lantern and even rivaled the iconic greatness of Hal Jordan. When Kyle joined the Justice League though, it was a significant moment for him, but one member of the team wasn't thrilled, and it was Wally West, who was known as the Flash. Both Wally and Kyle were legacy heroes and relatively new to their roles, but Wally initially disliked Kyle, believing him to be too inexperienced and lacking the ability to fill Hal's shoes. Similarly, Kyle couldn't stand Wally at first either. Despite their initial animosity towards each other though, they eventually learned to work together and became friends, with Wally even entrusting Kyle with protecting the Earth in his absence. And at 6, Elongated Man. Now, at least within the context of the show, Barry Allen and Ralph Dibny, aka Elongated Man, did not like each other when he was introduced. Ralph Dibny is a former police detective of the Central City Police Department and a private investigator. He was fired after Barry caught him planting evidence to ensure the conviction of a man who Dibny was certain was guilty, but of course, planting evidence is illegal and it got him thrown off the force, because, you know, Barry reported him, causing him to have to turn into being a pretty piss poor PI, honestly, but also starting to hate Barry. And Barry hated him, due to not only his own strong sense of justice, but also the fact that his father was an innocent man in prison for a crime that he didn't commit, so you can kind of see how planting false evidence would kind of trigger some anger. In the pre-Flashpoint timeline though, Ralph was one of the people who lost their lives during the Star Labs particle accelerator explosion. However, he reappeared alive in the post-Flashpoint timeline, gaining his powers due to exposure to dark matter from the Speed Force thanks to the Thinker's timing. Using these powers, Ralph joined Team Flash and began acting as a metahuman vigilante and superhero, initially referred to by the media as Stretchy Man, but shortly thereafter being dubbed the Elongated Man. Thank God for that. He and Barry then buried the hatchet, ironically, and left on good terms. Well, he left the show. Not on good terms with the show, but on good terms with, like, the character-wise, not the actors. It's a whole thing. Halfway through, in number 5, Vibe. After the creation and the reset of the Flashpoint timeline in Season 3 of The Flash, there was some serious tension between Cisco Ramon, aka Vibe, and Barry. The result of this, that was slowly revealed, was that in this timeline, Cisco's brother Dante was killed in a car accident, while this event never occurred in the original timeline. Dante's death affected Cisco greatly, to the point where he would frequently ask the Barry of this timeline to travel back in time to save Dante from his death, although this Barry would always refuse, driving a wedge in the two's relationship. At some point after this though, Cisco began to attend regular talk therapy sessions to express his grief, and having realized what had gone wrong, Barry explained to Team Flash how he saved his mother and how he changed everyone's lives in the process, which only angered Cisco more, because now he knew that Barry had saved a member of his own family but refused to do it for a member of Cisco's. They eventually made up, but Cisco definitely hated Barry for a good chunk of this season, being at odds with him even during the Invasion crossover event of that season until like the last part of it, when Barry was going to sacrifice himself to the Dominators, and then Cisco's like, "You're my friend," and I'm like, how does that clear everything up? But oh well, they had to do it. And at 4, Green Arrow. Oliver Queen, also known as Green Arrow, is arguably the most politically aware superhero in DC Comics. He advocates for the common people and doesn't have much patience for those who don't. And while he may not be the most powerful member of the Justice League, he is still important to the team, serving as a grounding force. In The Flash and Green Lantern Brave the Bold number 4, Oliver strongly disagrees with Barry and is just, there's a whole thing. He's appalled by the brutality of the police system and is disappointed that Barry is not more aware of it, while Barry believes that the police keep law and order in the city. I mean, like, I guess it would make sense for him to have that view because he's a CSI, but he's also a superhero who's doing the cops' job better than the cops. So Oliver thinks that the cops need to be monitored more closely, and he wants Barry to see that and just not be naive about it. But yeah, it causes some conflict, as you can suspect if you've ever been on Twitter. Hal Jordan watches the arguments between the two, feeling powerless to intervene, but eventually they do reconcile their differences, but this clash of opinions was not resolved permanently. Green Arrow is a politically aware superhero who champions the common people. Yeah, when he disagrees with the Flash on the issues of police brutality and the like, he's definitely gonna cause some friction, although this isn't a thing in the TV show, but I mean, they also had to give Barry a mentor because he had to figure out how to be a hero somehow. So getting close to the end, in number 3, Supergirl. In the New 52 storyline, Kara Zor-El arrives on Earth to a world that she doesn't fully comprehend and that fully doesn't understand her. Despite Superman's attempts to help her integrate into society, she still feels like an outsider and yearns for her lost home. So when the Kryptonian villain Hell appears and promises to restore Krypton to its former glory, Kara eagerly joins him, unaware that she's just being manipulated and endangering Earth in the process. Despite the efforts of Superman, Wonder Woman, and the Flash to stop Hell, Kara fights alongside him, hating the Flash for his interference, being unable to understand why he and Kal-El won't let her go home. However, with the help of the Justice League, Kara eventually comes to see the truth and just realizes the danger that this villain possesses and that she's actually just being manipulated and he can't bring her home. So she ultimately abandons her misguided quest and chooses to stay on Earth. But again, she was fighting the Flash, so that's good enough for this list. Superheroes can't hate each other forever, otherwise how are they gonna do comics where they team up so that the DC can make more money? Okay, come on. But ultimately, in at number 2, Jessie Quick. After acquiring speed powers through her father's formula, Jessie Quick desired to become a superhero. She crossed paths with Wally West, who started to train her, claiming that she could be his successor if anything ever happened to him. Jessie was thrilled with this, but her happiness was short-lived when she discovered that this was actually just a ploy. Wally was really using her to put pressure on Bart Allen, known as Impulse at the time, to take the mantle of the Flash more seriously. Jessie then felt betrayed by Wally's decision and came to loathe him, understandably. But despite her anger towards him, Jessie ultimately saved Wally's life but suffered significant injuries in the process. As Wally helped her recover, Jessie lost her powers, which she believed was due to Wally's actions, but was actually just the result of Savitar's interference. Nevertheless though, Jessie remained resentful towards Wally and did not like him, because not only did he lie to her, use her, and then also get hurt in the process of trying to save him, she also lost her speed. So I get it, okay? I get why she would hold a grudge against him even after saving his life. And finally, in at number 1, Batman. Now, this may be a bit of a controversial pick, but on Red Death's homeworld of Earth -52, Batman hated Barry enough to steal his speed. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but wait until you hear his story. The Bruce Wayne of Earth -52 started off fighting crime with Robin, but Robins kept dying left, right, and center. So understandably, Batman got more and more darker, becoming more extreme with his methods, let's call them. Which honestly seems realistic to me, aside from just, quitting fighting crime. But that can't happen because if he did, they wouldn't have a story, right? But this eventually leads him to Barry, who refuses to give Bruce his Speed Force powers. So Batman uses the various rogues' weapons to fight Barry, knocking him out, and then once Barry was unconscious, Bruce tied him to the front of a cosmic treadmill modified Batmobile and drives them both into the Speed Force. I'm not even kidding, okay? I don't even know how that happened or like how it logically worked, but okay, you do you, Bat Marty. You need to go back to the future in your Bat DeLorean cosmic treadmill. But yeah, when entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce ended up fusing together into an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for killing, while Barry's mind was trapped in Bruce's body. I think that qualifies.
Not all DC Comics superheroes play well with others, and that means they don't always see eye to eye with the goody two-shoes on the Justice League. With the amount of fallouts that Batman has had with the Justice League, you kinda knew there was a possibility he might end up on this video, and well, here he is. Batman has an interesting relationship with the League. Like many others on this list, Batman is prone to doing things his way first. He's also ultra aware of threats, and he knows the danger of an out-of-control Justice League. I don't believe he hates his teammates, except for the occasional Green Lantern, but Batman is just someone who isn't quick to trust others, and even then, he will still plan against you just in case. That rubs some people the wrong way, especially when Batman is not always a great communicator to begin with. It's kinda funny, for how charming and personable Bruce Wayne can be sometimes, he really is not a people person as Batman, and if others don't see his way of thinking, as the Justice League has not on multiple occasions, Batman has no problem with just walking away. Heroes have a lot of responsibilities. Kings also have a lot of responsibilities. So imagine being both. You need to have priorities, and it can understandably be quite annoying when your teammates don't seem to know which priorities should come first. Aquaman was an original charter member of the Justice League. He's been around since the very beginning. He's also the king of Atlantis, with his top priority being his people. Therefore, when the other League members were prioritizing their own personal problems over League activities, when Aquaman is balancing all of the above and still being a League member, he understandably decided, hey, what the heck? And he disbanded the League to form the Detroit League. That would actually take it all seriously. That ultimately failed, but Aquaman has had many other falling outs with the League for various different reasons, his loyalty to his own people first being one of the biggest ones. Now, I wouldn't say that Booster Gold hates the Justice League necessarily. I would say that there is a little bit of resentment there though. Booster Gold is a football star from the future, and he became a hero by stealing other heroes' stuff from a museum and going back in time. With that kind of origin story, he isn't really greatly respected by the other heroes, and oftentimes isn't taken very seriously by them either. It was actually a plot point in the Countdown to Infinite Crisis where he and Ted Kord, Blue Beetle, felt they weren't taken seriously enough by the Justice League. But the thing is that even though, yes, Booster Gold didn't really start off on the best foot, he has since had to deal with some pretty serious threats to the world, those dear to him, and to the whole entire time stream. He's purposely had to sacrifice people and his own morality and pride for the continuation of reality, and while he may be respected for that by some, it wasn't always a lot of Justice League members. John Constantine is a bit of a black sheep. Okay, he's a lot of a black sheep. Constantine is very much punk, non-conforming, he breaks the rules. That kind of thing doesn't really fly in the Justice League, or most teams for that matter. So, while Constantine has teamed up with others before and has been on the Justice League Dark, the fact that rules can attempt to stop him from doing what is needed needed to actually save the day is not really something he respects. Similar to Booster Gold, Constantine has had to make the absolute hardest choices possible for the ultimate good, but unlike Booster, John doesn't really crave acceptance from those who oppose his morals. Even on the Justice League Dark, John betrayed the team to do what some would argue was the right thing. He's understandably jaded and others kind of have to put up with him because he's just that good. Now I don't know if Lobo really hates the Justice League, but let's be honest, Lobo doesn't really belong on a team at all. I mean, for starters, the guy is powerful enough to do what he needs to do all by his lonesome, but that's kind of the point. He can already do a lot by himself, and that's kind of how he likes it. Lobo is absolutely an anti-hero if anything, and he's an incredibly reckless one as he can survive pretty much anything. He's too unpredictable to make for a good teammate, and when he's on a team, he's just causing endless arguments with his teammates. Though he gets a lot of respect from other heroes, notably Batman, who also still thinks of him as too unpredictable, it doesn't mean any of them like working with him, and he doesn't really love working with them either. Guy Gardner, being a Green Lantern, is quite a powerful hero, but he can sure be a bit of a hot-headed jerk sometimes. It feels like Guy thinks that Guy is best, and with a name like Guy, that was never going to be the reality. Guy is an alum of the Justice League International and is infamously its most hated member. Guy once tried to insist that between himself and Batman, he should be the one leading that team, but he did it in the most bratty, annoying way possible. So much so that it led to Batman knocking him out cold and the rest of the team just carrying on without him. I think ever since then, Guy pretty much hated everything. While you can't deny his usefulness from time to time, Guy is just kind of a jerk. He mocks his teammates and is pretty reckless, leading the League to go to other Green Lanterns before him if they can, and leaving Guy to have a much better time just being a Green Lantern away from the Justice Leagues of all kinds. Now if we included Batman on this list, why not one of his proteges? Jason Todd has a dark past, being the most disliked Robin before being snuffed out and then revived with a vengeance, going on a killing spree, and then becoming an incredibly troubled anti-hero. He's had a long path to redemption, and while he has toned down quite a bit, traditional morally golden Justice League teams are still something that just ain't gonna gel. As a bit of an outsider himself, Red Hood works best on a team like the Outsiders, who he has led. The League of Assassins, All Cast, and the Bat Family, these kind of teams are more Red Hood's people, and even then, his violence-first mentality and recklessness still gets him in trouble with his peers. The Justice League are just not willing to get their hands dirty, and he can't agree with that approach. Christopher Smith, who is better known as Peacemaker, thinks that the Justice League get just way too much credit. Based on his experience and the situations he finds himself in, the Justice League are a bunch of powerful dudes who show up too late. This is evident especially in the Peacemaker show. He believes the League show up after all the heavy work is already done. In the comics, he's recently been charged by Amanda Waller with taking out metahumans, and he had no qualms about doing it, as he has no qualms about taking any life in the name of peace. But of all the heroes he encountered, Roy Harper Arsenal was like the only League member he seemed to actually respect, and that was just for his skill. One of the weirdest things to ever happen was when Lex Luthor joined the Justice League and actually became a hero. After the events of Forever Evil, when the Crime Syndicate of America, an evil version of the Justice League from Earth 3, invaded the main continuity Earth and took out the Justice League, and Lex Luthor rallied a group to save the day, he then went on to join the Justice League, and the League let this happen just to keep their eyes on him. Lex obviously is the nemesis of Superman and has often been the enemy of the whole League, and hates Supes and almost anyone who holds what he believes is his place as the most powerful person on Earth. But he is incredibly intelligent and he knows how to use anyone to achieve his goals, which surprisingly are sometimes darkly for the greater good and to achieve a more prosperous humankind, as long as he stays on top. And lastly today, for the longest time, including Black Adam on a list of superheroes was a no-no, because he isn't what a lot of people would define as a superhero. But over time he has dabbled in being heroic. It's just for Black Adam, he just has a different, some could say older idea of what justice means. And it's not whatever the Justice League dishes out. Again, much like a lot of other characters in this video, Black Adam has his own way of doing things, and being as powerful as he is, there are very few who can stop him or stand in his way, and the Justice League have tried to be the ones to do so on way too many occasions. Specifically, whenever he tried to enforce his brand of justice outside of his own country of Kahndaq. That's the other thing. Like Aquaman, Black Adam is a leader, and he's also surprisingly a family man, and he prioritizes his country and his family and his ideals over almost anyone else.